welcome back to this episode of The Backstory. Today we're having a conversation with one of my good friends who's going to talk to us about art. So let's see what he has to say.
What's up, guys?
What's up?
How's
How
it
are
going?
you?
All good.
So let's introduce you first to the audience. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Edoardo. I'm from Italy, 21 years old, and as you can see, I have a little interest for art. So I'm just going to talk about, what my artistic practice is, kind of like what my inspirations are, and just more about my work.
Sure, let's get into it. So let's come around here and then let's look at the first painting, which is this one. So tell me a little bit about it, your inspiration, what it's about.
So, this is the very first serious painting that I did. And it depicts a picture of a fallen soldier in the World War II. He's also like a photographer. And it's kind of like put into contrast with these like cartoony bears, which are from the band Grateful Dead, which was kind of like a hippie band in the 60s. So, and they promoted concepts like peace and, trying to stop the war and stuff like that. So I put these two kind of concepts into contrast, where you have a picture of, the fallen soldiers with kind of like the Grateful Dead bears, and this piece is called Grateful Not to Be Dead. And what you can understand from my work as well is that I kind of like to explore realism with elements of abstraction, and I try to find kind of a symphony between my work. So I guess that would be kind of like my main style. So if we can move around to all of these other paintings. So as you can see, I started out exploring with the realism. This is a painting of Jimi Hendrix, and again, like with all of these paintings, I try to add an element which is kind of like unique, and for this specific painting it would be this flower, which is kind of like this 3D art effect. It's made with clay.
And it's the only thing that's colored here. Is there a reason for that? Is that to draw attention of the viewer to that one flower?
Yeah, and it's kind of like that aspect of the flower is not very detailed, realistic. It's more like cartoony.
Right.
And that again comes with the theme of like the realism and abstraction, because I feel like that's what creates an interesting piece, because you have something which is very detailed and like you can tell that there's a lot of skill required, but then also I feel like beautiful art comes from mistakes and kind of like a childlike drawing style.
Right.
So for example, if we go here, it's that same kind of concept where you see this like drawn man, which is a cool guy, and it's like very realistic the way that it's drawn.
Yeah. And
then you have this like very cartoony guy that where there isn't much attention into like the detail of it, and it's more kind of like I'm going with the flow and seeing what happens. And that's like one thing that's very important to me, because I feel like it also kind of reflects life a bit, because obviously like life isn't perfect. Us humans, we aren't perfect. And so we strive for perfection, but then we also have like that imbalance of imperfection, and that's kind of like that whole symphony is kind of what makes us human. So I think that's a beautiful concept.
Right.
And then this one here is like a crazy one, because obviously there's a lot going on, and you can kind of feel like the power of it, because like you see this guy screaming. It's actually Jack Nicholson.
Okay.
And this is Danny DeVito. So there's kind of like these two iconic figures, but then what I've done is I've kind of like collaged other bits of like my kind of influences, the things I like. So for example, I really like robots, so I added a robot here. This is like an ancient doll from like South American times, like kind of like Indian Native Americans. And then obviously in here is kind of like the childish drawing concept, which is heavily inspired by the artist Basquiat.
Okay.
So, and this is kind of like what goes within the piece is called In My Head. So it's kind of like that's what's going on in my head, and like kind of like the blueprint of what's outside, and more realistic stuff.
I wanted to ask, like, we've seen, I think, 4 or 5 paintings so far. How do you gain inspiration to start? So do you just have an empty canvas and then just get started straight away? Do you, for example, with the ones where, you know, there's a cartoon and also a real figure, do you draw one before the other? How do you decide those two things?
So basically it's kind of like a 2-step process. It's not really like I just start from the canvas. It's more like there's a strategy behind it, obviously. So usually what I do is I take a picture that I really like. So, you know, from that, I like vintage pictures, black and white. I just think they work really well. And then on my iPad, I kind of do a mock-up and add in the elements that I like. So for example, I would add in this robot and I would add in all of these aspects. And then obviously, like, you have a plan of what the painting is going to turn out like. But in the end, the painting doesn't really turn out exactly how there is, how it is, you know. So there's aspects of the painting that you expect and you know will happen, and there's aspects of the painting that you really don't expect, and it's kind of like a surprise to you as well when you make it.
And those aspects are probably up to your creativity then, to really take the drive in that direction.
And it's what makes the painting more interesting as well, because if I were to do a painting and I knew it would look exactly like that, and then it turns out exactly like that, there wouldn't be anything interesting about it. So it's kind of like how I entertain myself, but also like what makes the painting more interesting to the viewer, because there's, again, these unexpected things that arise. For example, if we go to this piece here, this is kind of like a new style I've been exploring. And I've been exploring doing these like paint splatters, which are very like organic and, you know, natural like, and compared to like how this figure is, which is kind of like more structured, it creates this contrast, because like you don't know what the splatters are gonna do. You have no idea how they're gonna turn out. But in the end, you just see it all happen and come together, and that's kind of like
very dynamic.
Yeah. So these 2 pieces is kind of like the style that I've been exploring recently. And as an artist, you need to find your own, you know, specific style and your language of expression, so that your art is recognizable around the world from different people. So this is what I've been, you know, expanding into lately, and
these are the splatter types as well.
These are like the splatter type paintings, and as you can see, the splatters kind of like make the painting more dynamic, and like these faces pop out a lot more, and just really adds more dimension to the piece. So in a bit, we're actually going to finish off one of the pieces I've been working on, and we're going to do something a bit more interactive and, you know, splatter some paint and just, you know, have fun.
Let's do it. So welcome to the interactive part. Tell us a little bit about what we're going to be doing today.
So we're about to finish off this painting by adding, you know, the iconic splatters that I showed you before. And, you know, this is really the part where you get to have fun, really not care about the outcome. Well, you care a little bit, obviously, but, you know, this is the part where we can just have fun, splatter the paint around. And then at the end of the video, after the paint has dried, we'll kind of reveal what the painting looks like after.
Cool. Let's get into it.
Let's start. So what I'm just doing is I have a brush, and I'm just gonna splatter the paint with this paint mixture that I have with a bit of water as well.
So I wanted to ask you about, you know, when you started your art journey and why. You know, a lot of people find it very tough to stick to it, but getting started is an important part of it. So tell me a little bit about that.
So just a little background about me. You know, I've always been interested in art, and just creativity in general has just been a big thing for me. And I've kind of like ventured and done many different things. But really, like, my passion for art started when I was really young, and like going to museums with my mom, And
how old were you at this point? Do you remember?
I was probably like 10, 11 years old.
Okay, so during school.
Yeah, I was, basically during school. And I remember my most impactful museum experience was when I went to the MoMA in New York, and I saw the first Basquiat painting in person. And that was really like an insane experience for me, because I kind of saw like the extent to which art can go, you know. And so then fast forward, you know, I took an art class back in school, but to be honest, I was really, really bad, like, and I always, like, I didn't really believe that. I always saw art as something that was so out of reach, and I didn't really believe that it's something that I could do myself.
Right.
So I feel like in art class, I also like didn't try to like apply myself, and I kind of just saw it as like, oh, whatever, you know, I'll just do this. And
yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, because we had art classes during school, like, you know, growing up, it was an option. Did you feel like the teaching methods were good, bad, beneficial, or neither?
I feel like they were good in a way, because, you know, it kind of introduced me to everything and, you know, the basics. But really, you know, I got into art by myself. I was in uni, and I kind of felt like there was something missing in my life. Like, there was a certain like voice that I needed to express, you know, and it kind of just came to me like it was a calling, you know. And at the start, like, yeah, I was bad. Like, I really just, it's something that takes time, and, you know, over time, obviously, like, I learned to get better and just explored everything, and it's just a whole experience within.
And then who was, or which artists were sort of your inspiration? Because you said it was a bit tough at the start, so you know, you always need something to motivate you through it.
So as I said, Basquiat, he was this young artist in New York in the 80s, and obviously like Andy Warhol, Picasso, like these were my main inspirations. But really, like, when it comes to making art, I think you need to look within and kind of do something that's personal to you, and that relates to kind of your life experience. So whenever I'm making art, I'm not really thinking about like the artistic process, like, oh, what am I gonna paint? I'm more thinking about life in general, and just the sort of experiences that shaped me in my life. And
so you want your art to be more reflective of your journey?
I want art to be reflective of my life,
of your life,
rather than just the opposite, where you kind of just like depict, you know, try to force it, as in like, So I think that was an important moment for me, and I guess also making things that I truly enjoy, rather than thinking like, oh, how's the public going to see this, or how are they going to perceive it, or will anyone buy my work?
So was it tough? Was it tough to, you know, get past that what will people think sort of quote, you know, at the start? I don't know, sometimes, you know, it's hard for us to get through things that we know are a bit, you know, out of the box, and it's not what everyone's doing. So was it tough for you mentally in that way?
So I feel like, that's the biggest hurdle. And at the start, I did think like, oh yeah, what are people going to think? But over time, I just got more comfortable with it, and I just understood that it's something that I'm doing for myself, and then kind of what people think of it is a byproduct, if that makes sense.
And you must have also got confidence from your skill. Like, you've done it a few times, and you know that, okay, I can do this. I have a decent level of skill, so...
Yeah, and, you know, when people started coming to me and said, you know, really complimenting my work, and truly, like, showing that they're interested in it, and that showed me that, and gave me a level of confidence that I should keep going. You know, it kind of gave me that feeling like, yeah, this is the right thing, like I need to stick to it, because it never happened before that I was truly that good at something that people were coming to me like saying how much they enjoyed my work, or you know.
That helps you push through those.
That helped me push through, exactly.
So tell me a little bit about, you know, what you've done so far, and also what the future aspirations are. Where do you intend to go with all of this art?
So, you know, over the last few years, I've been fortunate enough to sell quite a few works and do like 2 or 3 commissions.
Okay.
For people who are interested and wanted like a custom piece. And I mean, up to now, I've not really like been promoting it as much. So it's just literally people coming to me and that are interested in selling works. My main focus right now is just to create. But I always say that to be an artist is kind of like 50% of it is creating the work and 50% of it is promoting it and getting it out there.
The marketing. Yeah.
The marketing aspect of it. Unfortunately, it's kind of like very important as an artist to do that. So I always say like, yeah, even if you're Leonardo da Vinci, but you lock yourself in your studio and nobody can see your work, it's kind of useless because you can't get it out there. And so it's important to really be proud of your work and show it to people, post it on socials or however you want to get it out there.
So what are your kind of strategies in terms of that? Do you have any like pages, I don't know, Instagram pages, that kind of stuff?
So yeah, I have an Instagram page and, you know, I make like reels of my work. I also have a website. So people usually reach out to me on those 2 platforms. But in the next years, I'm planning on expanding and really like creating a brand around myself and my work, and to really like facilitate the whole process, and also just like to inspire others to show that you know you can do it as well.
Right.
And yeah, obviously it's a process and it's hard, it takes time. Being an artist is, I say, it's like being an athlete, you know, it's like being a pro athlete. Like not everybody can make it as a footballer, but that doesn't mean that you can't try. And as of now, I'd say that making a career as an artist is actually very possible, even in non-traditional ways. So I think that the gallery system where you work as an artist through a gallery is actually like died down quite a lot. And what's gonna rise now is people that are able to build their own brand and sell their work personally without having to give money to a gallery.
Everyone's doing it independently.
Everybody's doing it independently, and you asked what I want to do in the future, and my idea is kind of like to create a new concept for a gallery where it's much more collaborative and everybody kind of has the same kind of level of control and power, rather than just being one gallerist who controls all the artists under him. I want to create something which is much more of a collective, much more of like a collaborative space, and where you literally find people with very diverse skill sets, from sculptors to, you know, 3D artists, painters, maybe even like clothing designers.
Right,
and these people all collaborate together to form something which is very unique. And I think this is something that's missing in the space.
Yeah.
And which is kind of what I want to tap into for my future career.
I think some of the stuff you're saying is very similar to, you know, music labels and artists going independently. And I think now the way forward is most people are saying to do it independently so that they don't have someone controlling them or pulling the strings. So I think it's very similar to that, right?
It is, and this whole business model of what I want to do to form a creative collective in art and design is actually something that's very inspired from the record labels, because with a record label you have a producer, you have the sound engineer, you have the artists,
the whole team,
and this whole team of people collaborate and kind of unify to form like a very unique and special project, you know. And that's kind of what I want to do in the art and design space.
Yeah, that's your goal of expansion. How do you set your goals? Do you like write them down? Do you have like some sort of visualization? Do you have like, okay, I want to achieve this by this year? How do you go about it? Because I think art is very different to other you know, fields where you can have a more specified metric of success that, okay, I can achieve this in this many years. But as you talked about, it's so creative and free.
Yeah.
Sometimes it must be hard to say, I want to do this by then.
So I think it's very important to set goals which are specific and time-based, because it kind of gives you a deadline to, you know, when you want to achieve this by, and also plan. Like many people, they they have dreams, like they have ambitions, like, oh, I want to do this, I want to become a millionaire, you know, but have they really sat down and planned out what they're gonna do step by step, building it into like micro steps, literally, like, what am I gonna do today? What am I gonna do in the next 20 minutes?
Right.
And I think that's crucial, like even as an artist, and that's something that I struggle with because my mind is very like free flowing and more creative, but actually like what I need is to structure my time more effectively and be able to organize myself so I can achieve those goals.
I think one of the big differences between, you know, a regular corporate sort of life and this freelance independent thing is that you're in control of your own time.
Right.
On a previous episode in the last season, we had a similar topic with a guest, and he said that he controls all of his time, so he's kind of accountable for his own self.
Yeah.
If, for example, you don't do art or do anything related to it for 2 weeks, no one's going to call and say, why didn't you? It's on you, right?
Right.
You kind of have to take that ownership. So do you think that makes it better, difficult? How is it for you?
I think that, you know, in general, in life, like not just in art, everyone's accountable for themselves. Like there's very few things that you can't control in your life, you know? So with that comes to art as well. Like if you aren't consistent and don't do work, then that will reflect in your life. You know, you gotta try and find that self-discipline and that self-control where you like set yourself deadlines, set yourself tasks. And I think that's something that everyone struggles with.
Right.
You know, it's very human to do this, but I think that's just something to keep in mind as you know, as you move forward in life.
Yeah. I think that also takes us nicely into something I wanted to ask you, is that, you know, a lot of people want to do this. A lot of people want to go down a different route and go down a career that may not have the stability that others do. So what advice would you have for them? You know, say a young artist who's in, I don't know, grade 5, 10 years old, comes to you and says, I really like what you do, but I don't know where to start, what to do. How would you advise that?
I'd say the first thing is actually just go out there and create. And really do it from a place where you're doing it for yourself and you're exploring the possibility of what it could be. Because if you just sit all day and consume rather than produce, that's not going to get you anywhere. And what a lot of people fear is that when they create something at the start, obviously it's not going to be great. Like the first year, the second year, like it's not going to be good. And you kind of have to face that hurdle. And the sooner that you start and you kind of get the ball rolling, the better it is, because there's no way to bypass that. Like you don't just pick up a brush and become great. You know, Picasso started painting when he was like 9 years old, and by 12 he was able to paint these amazing realistic pictures.
Right.
So I don't think there's such thing as like you're born with talent. It's just what you choose to spend your time with.
Okay, so you think this is more of a, you know, we always have the debate hard work versus talent, like in terms of art.
Yeah.
Do you think there's actually no talent involved, or is there a little bit?
I think there is a little bit, like with your mindset as well, your creativity, obviously, like your ideas come into play. But yeah, I think it's more of like hard work, and also that ties in with consistency, because with everything in life you need to be consistent, and that's something that I've realized recently. So I'm taking a master's right now, which is engineering based. It's not even related to art at all. And this master's is obviously very challenging for me, and because of it I haven't been able to focus on my art as much, and I've realized that. And so when I was here during the holidays, I thought to myself, like, wow, if this is something that I truly like have a passion for and I believe in, it's something that I should be doing every day, and find a way to do it consistently. Even if maybe I can't paint every day, find a way to take 30 minutes out of my day-to-day routine
to do something related
to it, to stay kind of like on track.
And I think the final thing I wanted to, you know, go a little bit back and ask you about is, say your young artist comes to you and says they're having creative blocks, and they're just stopping because of that. I'm sure you've had maybe phases in your journey so far where you've been like, I don't know what to do, like I'm just a block. How do you deal with that?
So I think people deal with it in different ways, and really I think the key to it is to be able to entertain yourself with it. As I said, do it for you, because you enjoy the process, because that's really all you have. And find ways to have fun, like for example what we did there with the splatters, you know, like don't take it too seriously.
Yeah, just enjoy it. Yeah,
because life really isn't serious. Like just enjoy what you're doing and kind of be willing to fail, be willing to try things out.
Takes away the pressure as well, right? A little bit.
It takes away the pressure. Yeah, I think that it's kind of something that you have to do in order to keep yourself kind of in this creative space, is really like to risk and like, you know, take steps which are kind of like counterintuitive. Like you think like, why would I do this? Why would I ruin my painting by putting splatters on it or like screwing it up, messing it up? But if you take these steps, I think it leads to art which is much more interesting and much more enjoyable. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you sell your art and you've sold a few pieces of it, but I think a common question is the pricing of it. How do you know what to price it? For example, this one over here. How do you know how much is this worth versus your other artwork?
Right, that's a good question. I think it has to do with one, how long it takes for you to make, and two, the size of it, obviously, and you know, trying to keep a general kind of pricing, because obviously you can't go to one client and say it's this much and then to another client and give them a low price, because you need to be fair to all your clients. So I kind of just try to keep a general pricing, and then if people are not interested, then they're not interested. If they're interested, they are. I wouldn't want to undersell my work because I know its value and I know how much it takes.
Yeah.
So, you know, this one right here, it probably took like a week to make. I priced it around like 600 to 800
francs, Swiss francs. Yeah.
Swiss francs, and obviously like that one right there, which I don't know if it's in the frame, but
yeah, we can show it. Yeah.
It'd be like 1,000 because it took a lot more to make.
Mm-hmm.
And in the past, I've kind of sold within this range, you know, ranging from like 400 or 500 for like a small one, and then all the way up to like 700, 800 for like a bigger one.
So it depends on basically how long it takes and yeah, the complexity of it as well.
The complexity of it, obviously, like if you have a big one which is more of like a, you know, an easier style to make, then you'd sell it still for like, you gotta account the size, but also how long it takes.
Right.
And then obviously over time, like you can increase the prices as people become more interested, and as like you kind of have more of a reputation behind your work.
Yeah.
You can increase the prices, but as of now, you know, I'm still on the come up.
Yeah.
So, you know, I have to keep that in mind. But also it's important, as I said, to not undersell my work.
Yeah.
And understand its true value, because people might think, okay, like this guy, like, you know, he's not a famous artist yet. So they might want to buy it for cheap, or maybe because like, you know, they're friends with me or whatever, you know, but I think that it's important to just keep that value.
And you talked about you're on the come up, right? But
yeah,
being on the come up, it's always important to have support from a lot of people, and I know friends maybe have been there for you, but I think the solid foundation that family gives you is important, especially as we grew up, you know, in the same school, and we have a lot of time with our family. So what has been the role of your family in your art journey so far?
So my family has actually like been very supportive of my journey, and they understand my passion, and they understand that this is my calling. But at the same time, they want the best for me, obviously, and they want me to study, go to university, and, you know, as I said, now I'm doing a master's in engineering, and before I studied, my bachelor's was industrial design engineering, kind of creative engineering. But I think like this, my creative side and my kind of art has shaped that other side of me as well.
Okay.
So they kind of all come into play.
Yeah, together. Yeah.
Together, and yeah, my parents understand this, and they know that I'm doing this on the side and that it makes me happy. So I think that they're supportive of that.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're back. The paint has dried, semi-dried. So we're just gonna take out the cover and show you guys the final reveal of the painting. There we go.
So this is the final. You want to talk a little bit about it as well? Tell me what's going on in terms of the actual art.
So obviously this is inspired by the podcast as well. It's two people together, you know, two friends interacting, talking, and
Which one am I?
I don't know, you pick. But basically, it also has to do with the two sides of like your life. Obviously, you have like the subconscious and the conscious part of your brain. The conscious part knows the path that you're gonna take, knows exactly what you have to do, and then obviously the subconscious is more of like the self-sabotaging part, like the part that's kind of leading you in the wrong direction. And I think in life, there has to be that balance between these two sides. And like we're not perfect robots, like we won't always know to do the right thing, and kind of that's like what I wanted to express with this piece.
Yeah, cool. That's good. Well, thanks a lot, Edoardo, for hopping onto this episode, showing me a lot of your art. I think the dynamic piece was pretty cool as well. And best of luck for the future. And
Thank you so much, man. Yeah,
we'll catch up soon.
for sure, man. It's been a pleasure to have you.
See you, bro.
See you, bro. Get out now.